Greetings to everybody and welcome to the 6th episode of NatureSpeaks. NatureSpeaks is brought to you by Himalayan Nature and I'm him working for GSL in Kathmandu, Nepal office. For today's program, I'm supported as usual by Dr. Tulsi Subedi, Director of Himalayan Nature and co-host of this program. Keeping up with our great tradition of having renowned scholars on the subject, this time we have somebody who has studied the oddity of the nature. Not many people would take up that subject as their expertise, but certainly the guest we have today has taken up this. Our speaker is Dr. Prem Budha, who has studied mollusks, or in layman's language, snails, or the slimy creatures that we have been seeing almost every day these days during monsoon time. Of course, snails are also delicacy and are linked to the rich cultural heritage of some of the community that we have in this country. Let me just give you a brief introduction about our speaker, Prem Budha, who received his PhD on the taxonomy of the terrestrial snails of Nepal from University of Antwerp, Belgium in 2017. He has been working on the mollusks for more than 20 years, during which he has described 17 species of terrestrial mollusks new to science, including several other species reported new to the country. He is currently an associate professor at the Central Department of Zoology, where he has been teaching since 1998. He has worked together with several museums, particularly the Natural History Museum, London, the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, Brussels, and Cambridge University Zoology Museum. He has published more than 40 papers on biodiversity subject as refereed papers, book chapters, proceedings, and books. He has received first prize on the Malacological Conservation Award for the best presentation from King Leopold III, Belgium, and research grants from the Malacological Society of London, Unitas Malacologia, whatever that means. He has worked with the Asian Development Bank, National Trust for Nature Conservation, National Academy for Science and Technology, Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation in various capacity, mostly as subject expert biologist for these various institutions. He is a long-standing member of the Mollusk Specialist Group of IUCN Species Survival Commission. So let's welcome Dr. Prem Budha. Dr. Saab, welcome to the program.
Yes, good evening. Namaste, everybody. It is my pleasure to be a presenter today. I would like to thank Dr. Hemsagar Baralji and Himalayan Nature who provided me this opportunity. So I am the Associate Professor in the Central Department of Zoology, Tribhuvan University. So I have been working in the Zoology department since last 22 years. So I have been working on the mollusk of Nepal since last 15 years. So in this regard, Dr. Baral gave me this opportunity to deliver some of the aspects of this unexplored taxa of Nepal, because most of the people, they are in the conservation biology, they talk about high level charismatic animals, but these are the very small and tiny organisms that are I'm going to present. So in this context, I'm going to share my slide. I hope it will.
Okay, Dr. Saab, you continue sharing your slides, and in the meantime, I'll do some kind of housekeeping for today. So I just wanted to let everybody know that this session that we are currently running is being recorded, and it is live streamed but, through the use of the Facebook, Himalayan Nature's Facebook page. And regarding the presentation that Dr. Prem is going to present soon, if you like to ask any questions, please hold that until his last few slides. At that time, Dr. Tulsi will open up the chat options, and please do ask questions directed to him, which I will pick up and ask the questions, and we'll try to entertain as many questions as possible. So, Dr. Prem, are you ready for presentation?
Yeah. So, is my slide is working?
I think you need to have that on the full slide. So you.
Sorry. So there is a slide.
It's on the. Yeah, you just follow the usual thing you used to do when presenting slides.
So, yeah, okay. So, is it visible? My slide is visible?
Yes.
Okay. So today, in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the mollusk. So this is that I'm working on the taxonomy since last 25 years. In 10 years, Nepalese malacology. So I'm going to present a taxonomy of mollusk, freshwater, and terrestrial mollusk of Nepal, and their diversity and their conservation aspects in Nepal. So in my presentation, I will talk about, because many of the participants may be not well familiar with the terminology of the mollusk. So I'll talk about what are the mollusks. Very, very brief introduction about what are mollusks and why should we study them. What are the benefits, or what kind of creatures they are. So in this case, in the second, I will also highlight about the brief history of malacological research in the Indian subcontinent, and also I will also highlight a few flashbacks on the identifying techniques, what the characters are malacologists used to identify the mollusks. So then after I will go about what is the diversity of the Malacofauna of Nepal, and what are the threats, and why should we conserve the mollusk. And then I will directly go into the research. What are the gaps, research gaps, and future prospects. So if you see these are the mollusks are generally soft-bodied animals. So they have the very soft body, but some of the species, snails, they have the hard covering. So that inside that cover that is used as the protective cover. So if we look about the body size of different mollusks, so they are very tiny. The ranges from even the less than 0.5 mm to the 59 feet. You can imagine that are the very giant and the largest invertebrates in the world. They also belong to the mollusk. So that giant squid, that is the size of giant squid is about 60 feet long, and even nearly 1 ton of the weight. So similarly, another interesting part of the mollusk is there is the species, that is the octopus, which one is considered as the most intelligent invertebrates that present in our planet. So that there are the various types of the mollusk. They are found in the universe. So they are found in the oceans, even in the gorges, and there are some of the species they are found in the freshwater, land, and some species they are even present even above the snow lines. So generally these mollusks, they are divided into different classes. There are 7 classes of the mollusk. So among these 7, almost the 5 classes that they are exclusively marine, but among the 7 classes, gastropods and the bivalves, they are found in freshwater and land generally. So why should we study the mollusk? So this is the because the mollusk, they are the second largest group of the animals. So after the arthropods, in terms of the species diversity, mollusks, they belong to the second largest group of the animal kingdoms. So if we consider the relationship of these mollusks with the human beings, so these mollusks are the part of our human cultures. You can see there are the mollusks, these are part of the life since the beginning of the human civilizations. You can see in the Hindu philosophy and even in the Buddhist, these mollusks, they are the part of the life because we need these mollusk cells from the birth to the death. So this is the part, because by blowing some of the important chunk shells of the mollusk, they are considered as they create the positive sound in the nature, so that to make the positivity and to make the evils away from from our environment. So it is considered important. So similarly, the most important part is any animals in the world. If there are any animals that are extinct, the largest number of the extinction rate is of the mollusk. So that there are either the freshwater or terrestrial or even the marine. These are the highest number of the species, threatened species or extinct species belong to the mollusk. So another interesting part is the mollusk. They are found in the very narrow range, very restricted range. They are distributed. That's why the endemism in the mollusk is the highest in any other organisms in the animal kingdoms. So that if we consider the Himalaya, these mollusks are 94% terrestrial mollusks. They are considered as the endemic in the Himalayas. So similarly, the ecosystem services they provide, the ecosystem services, because many mollusks, they recycle nutrient, recycle in the freshwaters. Several mollusks, they are the filter feeders, so that they used in the cleaning of the waters. So they are also the food of the other organisms, so that sometimes they decompose the materials, so that they increase the soil quality of to enhance the ecosystem services. So they are also used as the model bioindicators and model organisms in the climate change as well. So because the many species of the mollusk, they are used as the indicator of the water health or the environmental health conditions. So that if there are some of the species, they are only found in the very clean water, and some are found in the wide polluted water. So that's why studying the presence and absence of such kind of organisms, so they can help in to monitor the health of the environment. So another economic part of these mollusks, they are the invasive species. There are some of the invasive species. Some are species that are the pestiferous in nature, and some carry diseases for the human beings and other wild animals, domestic animals. So there are they are the part of the parasite life cycle. So if we talk about the studies in Nepal, so that mollusk is the least or poorly studied animals. So I prefer to study the mollusk. So as we considered the invasive species, there is one species that is known as the Achatina fulica. So I missed the pictures here. So it was the global problems. So that Achatina fulica is the global problem. So it is spread all over the world. So it was originally found in the East Africa. So before the 80s, in the native range in Kenya. So this species was used as the food value. So by looking this food value of this species, it was brought to the Madagascar. So in that area, nobody used as the food in the Madagascar. So that after that, what happened that the population of that species rapidly increased in that area. So so one of the pioneer malacologists in the world, Benson, who was the first malacologist in the Indian subcontinent. So he brought two individuals of these snails and released in the Calcutta Garden in 1847. So from that one individuals, so up to 1930s, it spread in the entire India, and even spread in Nepal, and from the Sri Lanka, it was spread all over the world from this two individuals. So if we talk about the historical background of the malacological research, so it begins in 18th. So William Henry Benson, so he was the pioneer and a beginner of the malacological study in the Indian subcontinent, and he published a first paper in 1829. So I think this is the beginning of the whole malacological study in the whole Indian subcontinent. So that following him, there are so many other authors, such as Gordon Austin, Thomas Hutton, William Theobald, Gerard Goode, Neville, Beddoe, Preston, Hanley and Theobald, Anandale, Blandford. These are the pioneer researchers of who investigated Malacofauna in the entire subcontinent. All their original papers, they are published either in the Journal of Asiatic Society of Bengal, or Annals and the Magazines of Natural History, or Records of Indian Museums, or Proceedings of Zoological Society of London. So these are some of the most of the their original descriptions, they are found in these journals. So this is the Blanford and Gordon Austin and Gerard Good. They published they compiled the whole past studies and compiled into 3 books, Fauna of the British India. So 3 volumes that is published in 1998, the first volume, and second volume 1914, and third volume in 1921. So these are the 3 volumes. These are the published, and all the past research work of the entire Indian subcontinent. But unfortunately, there are no records of very few records, if present, from the Nepal. So what kind of the characters these malacologists follow to identify the snails is the shape. Some of the snails, they are elongated, and some are just depressed type of the cells. And some snails, they have the openings in the right hand side, and some of the snails, they have the opening in the left hand side. So by studying these also, this can distinguish some of the generic characters of the snails. So another is there is the opening. If we look the underside of the snails, so there is some of the openings that is called the umbilicus. In that openings also, in some genera, these openings are absent, and some are very tiny, and some are big, and some are really large opening. These are called as the umbilicus. So by looking these also some of the generic characters. So next is the if you look the surface texture of the shell, because the shell looks like the shiny in some cases, some are glossy, and in some cases they show the different structures in the shells. If we study at the micro level, and we can find some of the nodules, hairs, or spines, or we can find some of the bands in the cells. So these are the characters. If we study the high resolution taxonomy or high resolution identification, or species level or genus level identifications, we can use this kind of the characters. So in some of the species, there are the teeth. Some in terminologies are used as the teeth. But in some cases they are used called as the folds. If we look the apertures, there are different folds are easily seen in the mouth parts. So that there are several terminologies are used to differentiate these kind of structures. But another interesting part, because the protoconch is the first few cells. If you look in the image here, you can see this is the protoconch. This is the first. Whenever it is the birth of the snails, so there is the first part. From there, the other bodies or other cells, they increased later. So these the typical characteristic features of these protoconchs are very important. So we can identify this kind of the structures, what kind of the structures are found in the protoconch, and on the basis of this we can identify it. And the sculptures in the body are also important. So by looking at the sculptures in the body, it is very important. In some of the cases, if you look the texture of the cells, this can be, like if we look the texture of the surface of the cells, these are different in different genus and species. And some of the groups, you can see that the tubes-like structures are visible, which are very important taxonomic characters. The length of the tube, and the mouth, aperture site, and even some of the ridges in the shell. So this is what are the malacological research in Nepal. So so if we look at the historical background of the malacology, and even the faunal study has been rapidly developed in Nepal after 1950s, but the first described snail from Nepal is the Pupa urina, that is the Benson described. That is the first malacologist described from Nepal. But unfortunately, that is the type locality of this snail was not in Nepal. It was in the lower downstream of the Karnali River. So this Ghagra that is present in India. So, but based on the that flood, that species was reported from considered as the species from Nepal. So, if you look the next after 95 years, there are no any publications on the mollusk, and after that, Neville in 1878 published 2 reports from Nepal. That is the Nanina and Enadinus. One is the snail and another is the slug. So that is the snail Nanina, which is called as the Bensonis nepalensis. That is the very common snails in our garden these days. This is the same species first described in as the Nanina. So another is the slug that is also commonly found in Nepal. So after that, in 1973, only 2 papers published. So this is the NatureSpeaks who described the new species from Nepal. So this is the new species that described from the hot one, NatureSpeaks. So I considered as the 1970s is the beginning point of the malacological research of the terrestrial land snails in Nepal. So that after that, there are so many Russian scientists, Siliko and Kuznetsov. They have the, particularly Kuznetsov, he surveyed, he visited several times of Nepal and collected the snails. And Siliko and Kuznetsov, they identified several new reports and new species from Nepal. So that after that, there are some of the Bosniaks, which is the German scientist, they published the papers from Nepal. So if we look the 19th century malacologist, Gordon Austin indicated the name of Nepal in the series of his publications in the land and freshwater molluscs of the India. So you can see in the red circle, there is the name of the Nepal. So, but unfortunately, I visited all the documents, all the references of the Gordon Austin, but there is not a single species I found reported from Nepal. So this is because they studied in the Western Himalaya, Northern East India, they studied Northeast India, so that Nepal is in between the Western and Eastern Himalaya. So they considered Nepal as the, in their book, but unfortunately, there is not a species record in Nepal. So what about the freshwater mollusks then? So there are only few. Even the freshwater snails is started very recently. You can say after this in the very late 1990s. If we look some of the papers, the Pfeiffer in 1999. After that, you can find some of the Subba, he reported the snails, Subba and Ghosh. Another, the worker, Neshemen et al. He worked in the Kathmandu University and he documented many freshwater mollusks of Nepal. So after that, the Glower and Bosniaks, he used to visit throughout Nepal and collected many species, and he published several papers. So if we look the diversity of terrestrial snails, so if we look the first record in 1864 and then 1973, after that, the Russian scientists documented some of the snails. I found that 98 species till that. So I joined to work to study the mollusk. From 2016 onward, I visited several parts of the country and collected specimens and identified. And I also tried to prepare the checklist of the Nepalese mollusk, and I documented 138 species in 2015. And after that, I described some new species, 17 new species to the science, and even 17 new records in. Recently, there is one species has been added in the list. Just yesterday, I got the paper that is the introduced species. That is the Paraloma cervilis, that is also reported from the AKF area. So it's the very new report from Nepal. So if we look at the diversity of the freshwater mollusk, so I am compiling the list of the all freshwater mollusks documented from Nepal. So there are altogether 133 species of freshwater mollusks that are already noted. So among them, 68 gastropods and 35 bivalves have been reported from Nepal. But it needs to be revise the number of the species, because some of the species may be already synonymized by the recent authors. So these are some of the important the mollusk species, gastropods. These are the freshwater snails and bivalves. So snail, gastropods and bivalves. There are two classes found in Nepal. So during the course of my research, I tried to explore some of the very important taxa, some of the group taxa that I known as the Glaciula. So during that course, I tried to find some of the specimens deposited in Natural History Museum, London. So the pioneer researcher, who is the Gordon Austin, who described nearly 60% of land snails, mollusks of Indian subcontinent, and he has dissected one specimen from Assam. So he half exposed that specimen and left. So I tried to I found that specimen in the Natural History Museum and requested there, and they provided me the sample, and I re-dissected the same specimen after 133 years later. So I completely exposed that. I returned this reproductive anatomy. So male part is very important in the snail taxonomy, particularly terrestrial snails. So I found that there is a very long flagellum in the male organs. So there are the snails, they have the male and female organ both in the same, in this case, and some have the different sexes, but in many cases, hermaphrodite snails, both are the same. But the male part is very typical to delineate species distinctions. And I found that, so the Gordon Austin, he placed that species under the bacillum based on the turreted shell. But I tried to look the anatomy, and I found that, okay, this is not the bacillum. it looks more like another genus. So I tried to, I called it as not the bacillum, but it was the Rishetia theobaldi. So instead of this. So based on this, so I tried to look the anatomy of the same group from different part, and I analyzed all the published anatomy of the world, and I found that there are some typical differences in the anatomy of these snails. So if you look in this case, there are some comb-like structures here. In this case, you can see some of the hand-like structures, and in some in down here you can see the very long flagellum. You can see, and in this case, you can see some of the short flagellum. But these are the structures quite important to differentiate different group of the snails. So on the basis of this study, what I found that, so I grouped all the documented reproductive anatomy and their shell morphology, shell height and width ratios. So I found that there are two groups are visible in that case. In the one group, there is the comb shape, there is the epiphyseal cecum is absent, or if there is the hand-shaped reproductive flagellum, that in this case also epiphyseal cecum is absent. But if you look the another elongated narrow snails, if you look, there are the tubular sac is present, but in all these cases epiphyseal cecum is present. So that I tried to group, because previously Rishetia was considered as a subgenus of the Glaciula, but some of the authors, they also used as a full genus, but it was not really sorted the problems, what are the really happening there. So from my study, it was confirmed that these are two different groups. So they are reproductively, they are different, and they are morphologically, they are different. So that if there is the shell height and shell width ratio is less than 2.3, that group comes under the Glaciula, and another, if there is the more than that, it is considered the Rishetia. So that based on this, I described some of the new species of the Rishetia in Glaciula from Nepal. So these are another tiny snail group, that is the upperculated land snails. The size of these snails is 0.5 mm to 3 mm. So these are all new species to science. So that paper is published in European Journal of Taxonomy in 2017. So similarly, there are the other species that I described with other colleagues, that are the Paul Gargili, that is the very good taxonomist in the world, and who described many new species. And we described 3 new endothyroid species from Nepal, and there are 6 more species of the Glaciula and the Rishetia from Nepal. So in this case, I also described as the one species, Rishetia Tribhuvan, that I just gave the name after my university, because that snail was found in the Tribhuvan University garden, within that garden. So that the identification and working, we are not need to go far away from where we are living. So there are, if we look carefully, and there are plenty of opportunity to identify new species in this. So there are some these are the future perspectives So there are many more investigation to be done. So updating the checklist is another part. So there are so many invasive species are coming up. So biogeographical study, DNA barcoding is another important part to do in the future. Molecular phylogeny and management of the voucher specimens. This is very important for the future plan to work on these snails. So these are the some of the glimpse about my field work. Some of the people, these are fishing. So they are also collecting mollusks from the lakes and rivers. So I try to find out the trends of what is the trend of the mollusk and what is the population trend in Nepal. So I try to find out the population trend of the mollusk and consumption trend. So consumption trend is also decreasing. So there are the respondents, decreasing trend of the consumption trend. These are only for the edible mollusk. The population trend of the edible mollusk is more than 92% people who are the real collector of the snails and mussels. They are saying that the population of these snails is rapidly decreasing. So the next is I try to find what may be the possible causes of this population decline. So that one is the high consumption. According to the people's perception, they say the high consumption. So this is the contradictory, because in the previous part it is the decreasing trend, but in this case it is the consumption rate is high. So I asked the question, so why this is this? So the people saying that although in the past only the Tharu people, they used to eat the mollusk in the steady area, but now the many people, so all other hill people, they are also consuming the mollusk. So in this case, if we just calculate the number of the consumption rate, that is really high. It comes. So another part I noticed is the fish poisoning, habitat loss, drying out of the water from the lakes. Even the fish farming is the regular practice in all over the wetlands in Nepal. So fish farming and fish farming practice, I can say. So these are the some causes of the declining of the freshwater mollusks in Nepal. So I try to find, is there really the habitat loss? So I try to explore some of the past habitat of the pristine mollusk habitats. So I try to explore these. So if you look the habitat that is the lake in Purena Lake. That is the huge lake, 52 hectare lake. And if you look at that lake now, there is not a symptoms of the lake. So whole lake is converted into agricultural land. So another lake is called this Jaljalia Lake. It is also converted into fully agricultural land. So if you look, this is the very nice habitat of the birds. So it is also converting into the barren lands. So these are the quite visible parts that I observed. These are the very good past habitats. There are no more habitats. So decreasing habitat loss is the main reason of this. And there is the fish poisoning also. I noticed that there is one lake, and that is the Purena Lake in Ghodagodi Lake area, Kailali. So in that lake, I found that people are farming, fish culture is there, but somebody else came and poured the one metaseed bottle in the whole lake. So whole lake is dead now. So I try to find if there is the remaining of the mollusk. So only that there are not a single individual, live individuals of mollusk reported from that area. So if you look down at the Coca-Cola, these are some of the examples. So in the past, people used to use the poisons for the fishing and collect the fish from the streams. Now, this river of Kola, that was considered as a very nice habitat for the mollusk, and it was considered very, very good pristine places for the mollusk. But now there are no more. So these are some of the practices. People, they are drying the entire lake during the dry season, and they fill the water again, and they culture the fish. This is the practice, so that all the aquatic systems have been collapsed in the nature. So overexploitation, fish farming practices, and most of the very, very nice and natural lakes, they are converted into the fish pond, so that they are exploiting and making. So, and finally, there are some of the, I identified some of the research gaps for the future. So there are so many unidentified species are yet to be identified. Several dozens of new species I already noticed, and they are yet to be described. So there are many species, they have the species complex, even in the freshwater or in the terrestrial mollusk. So this need to be sorted out. So if you look the very highly consumed Bellamia bengalensis, one species. So there are more than 12 forms, 12 varieties of these mollusks, but we don't know either they are the same species or subspecies, or they are the different species. So we need to trace out these are the species complex problems by working on the molecular analysis of these snails. So there are many localities in the past, the British colonial period, many past mollusks, malacologists, they identified the snails, they described new species on the basis of the single individuals, single shell. We don't know if that species exists from that locations these days. So we need to revisit such kind of areas to find out the population level studies, whether there is the existence or they're already extinct from the environment. So there are some of the impact studies are also good options, so that the forest fire is very common. So there is the direct impact of the terrestrial snails due to the forest fire. Because these are the very slow moving animals, they have no option to escape from the forest fires. So they have to be killed. So this is the one. Another is the anthropogenic activities and climate change impact of the climate change, because they are very highly sensitive. They are found very low, restricted low range. So we need to monitor such kind of low range species, so that it can indicate what are the impacts on the climate, on the animals about the climate change. So there is a capacity building and basic infrastructure developments are still very poor. So that are the reasons I am not able to describe the new species. So I know these are the new species, but due to some very minor basic infrastructure problem developments, it is very difficult to describe the species. So why should we conserve this mollusk? So as I know that these are the freshwater as well as the terrestrial mollusks, they are among the threatened animal groups. So if you look the history and data, if you look in the United States and Canada, among the 300 viable species, 202 species are listed, either they are already extinct or they are in the verge of the extinctions. So in Europe, there are the 44% of the freshwater mollusks, they are threatened with the extinctions already. So in Africa, there are 29%. In Indo-Burma, there are the 70%. But we don't know what is the current situation in our area. So these are the very data we need to establish. So this is finally there's some conservation scientists, they are working on the mollusk conservations in the world, because this is the high topic, because in the freshwater also, freshwater itself, freshwater ecosystem, they are the most vulnerable. Even terrestrial ecosystems, they are also vulnerable. So, so by looking this, the factors, there are the, for the conservation of the mollusk, there are two important factors can be noticed, can be identified. There are the intrinsic factor, that are the, which are happened within the individuals or in the population of the species. So there's gamete productions, fertilizations, reproductive outputs, infestations, recruitment, population, or distribution. These are the individual or population level characters. So we have to notice this kind of the characters. Another is the extinction factors are the climate change, catchment area, water habitat alterations, disease or parasitisms, invasive species, and even fish host. That is the, I forget to tell you later, previously, because some of the species, they are completely dependent on the fish. So they complete their whole life cycle on the gill. If they do not find the fish, the whole, the bivalve, they will vanish from the area. So if they will vanish from the area, so that ultimately happens with the fish washer. That's the predation, exploitation. These are some of the very important characters. So I'm coming in conclusions. I have not, I'm delivering on the one way. So now I'm concluding, so that mollusk, they are in most of the parts of Nepal, they are still unexplored. We need to explore some of the freshwater habitat, or some of the pristine habitat of the terrestrial ecosystems and freshwater ecosystems. Many species, they may be at the risk of extinctions, but they will vanish without noticing by the peoples. So studies on the species complexes are very, this is the very nice piece of work to be done. So conservation initiative is for the poorly studied taxa, particularly invertebrates, must be highlighted, because they have the very good role in the whole ecosystems, and they provide the food for the whole, play the important role in the biodiversity conservations. So thank you very much. Now I'm finally, I would like to acknowledge some of my pioneer researchers. So my professors, Thierry Bekaljau, Fred Nags, who helped me. He's the one that I am here to be a taxonomist of the Nepal. So similarly, I got the Malacological Society, Department of National Park. Even there are some person, John Ablet, Dinajar Rahim, Juliet Series, Eve Barrett. These are some of the peoples that I would like to acknowledge. Finally, I would like to acknowledge the Himalayan nature and Dr. Himsagar Bral, who provided me this opportunity to deliver my lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prem Budha, for your very interesting presentation. There have been a lot of questions now that have come your way, and I will try to pick up some of them, and please try to answer them, you know, very brief so that I can cover as many as possible. So the first question is from, I will name the person, Binay Thapa. He's asking, how can we prevent the invasion of Achatina fulica, which is, I guess, the introduced species, in our kitchen garden biologically? So maybe just a short answer.
Yeah, that's a very nice, question, because it is already invaded. So only the last options because nobody has control in the world from any country. So it is. So one thing is we have to prevent to reach in the new area. That is the first option. We have to keep in mind, if you see the first new area, you have to kill them. You have to kill them first.
Saying manually. You are saying manually.
Manually, and you can. There are some of the pesticide, molluscicide are also available. Local people, they are using the salts. That seems very effective. Then the other.
Do you recommend pesticides, molluscicides?
Yeah, in the new, collect and destroy it. So that is the only options. So collective effort.
So thank you. I think that's a good answer. So just on this Achatina fulica, because most of us are not aware, how that looks like. Does that look like? Does it have a kind of rufous brown outer shell, or just the white? The snails just on the backyard everywhere. They also enter the kitchen. I think the most destructive organism, Binay Thapa wrote. So is that the same, or?
So it is the same, because sorry, say I could not put that snail because I had a lot of photographs of that snail, but I inserted that, but it was sent behind the, I think, slide. So that's why it was.
So what is the color? What is the color of the shell, Dr. Budha? What is the color?
Brownish color. Some banded.
Okay, banded. So has that reached, what is the altitude of that, like snail?
So this
is it only found in the lowland, also in the mid hills?
This is particularly found in the lowland, but now it has invaded in some of the mid hill areas of Nepal. So this is found throughout the terrain, all terrain districts, and it is invaded into the mid hill districts as well. In most of them. So, the optimum temperature it was considered is the 0 degree. It cannot tolerate or survive below the 0 degree, but that is the limit. It can invade anywhere.
So thank you, Dr. Budha. Another question from Kiran Bandari is about the snails acting as the reservoir of certain parasitic disease or kind of intermediate host. And the question is any work or study done regarding snails, transmitting disease kind of thing? Maybe you can be very brief here again.
Yeah, it is. We have the one study we done in the snail, freshwater snails. So there are some schistosomiasis, is caused by this. There are many freshwater snails which are common. There are 7 to 8 freshwater snails. They are found as the secondary host of different diseases. There is the circular larva of trematodes. They are found in different snails in the area where the livestock drink in the wetlands or even the wildlife. We reported the species not only from the domestic animals, but some of the these parasitic infestation are found from the elephant and the rhinos as well. So there are the paper. One of my student is also got the PhD from the United States, Ramesh Devkota, and he has studied and then a lot. So
So
it's
yeah.
still to be done. But
Okay,
we have
it's still to be done. But just to be precise in your answer, I think, is any work or study done regarding snails and disease transmission in Nepal?
yes,
How do you say yes or no?
There is yes.
Yes. But more to be done. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, schistosomiasis is considered, but it is not yet reported. It was reported one time, but in the
schistosomiasis is something that was known before that the study was done in Nepal. So somewhere else somebody had already studied, but also we studied here and found that that is being transmitted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So another question is Tobias Doyer. My guess is that everybody's complimenting for the talk, so I'm just skipping that part. So my guess is that 103 species in Nepal is an underestimate. I think you will say yes to that. Do you have any guess how many undescribed species might be left to be discovered in Nepal? Undescribed species, probably is referring to new to science kind of thing.
So for me, in case of only the terrestrial snail, there will not be the 1,000 species.
My goodness.
Not less than 1,000 species. Among them, there will be the 80% will be the new to, these will be the endemics in Nepal. But regarding the freshwater snails, yes, 103 species is the very, very underestimated number, because it is already the described species, because the freshwater mollusk study has started only 2000 beyond.
That's
you can
so
see 20 years.
Very, very interesting.
So a lot of work should be done. So I can estimate it is a very low number.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And another question from Saroj Lamichane is, the climate change impact on distribution of mollusk, and what will happen is the climate change is taking place, and how will that affect their population and distribution status and things like that. So again, I think you did mention that a little bit earlier on, very sensitive indicator of environmental health, so maybe you can just add to it and make it brief so that I can go to next question.
Yes, I can give only one example in this case. So invasive species, Ekaterina fuleca. Unfortunately, I could not show you the figure of that. So that snail was invading even in the cooler part of the country. This is a very good example. So in the past, so I tried to rear this snail in Kathmandu in 20 years back. I was not successful, but this snail is reported from Kathmandu now. So that is the good example how the climate change is impacting. So some of the species, they are shifting like the plants.
Yeah, and I guess it's very early stage for us to say that what effect climate change is having on our snails, because the study itself was started in the 70s, according to your presentation. So I think we need to have a kind of long-term database, the distribution, and I think more in-depth knowledge. So Dr. Budha, another question from Vinay Thapa is asking about the seafood, the mollusks that are brought from the seas. Are they all packed when they come here, or some are brought alive, and what are the quarantine process, if you know?
The quarantine process in Nepal is really poor, I can say. So in this, generally they are not, no, they all come in the pack. So ice pack, from the marine foods. So some are the ready-made packed, not live.
Thank you.
So I can say, in the quarantine, I have not any notice any species have been captured by the quarantine in Nepal. So
they might have captured and eaten. Never noticed, huh? What about the things like octopus and those, you know?
So these are the preserved. This comes in the preserved conditions, not live.
Kiran Bhandari is very interested. He might, he says my interest towards mollusk has been elevated, so he might contact you further.
So it is my pleasure.
Next question is, if there are no questions, I will ask you some questions. So Basu Bidari from Chitwan is asking how many species of snails, globally threatened species in Nepal? That's a good question, Basu. Well done.
This is really very good questions. There are 2 species are listed in the globally threatened category, but unfortunately these species are, I think, in the revision process. I think there are many more species should be listed in that, because we don't have the population data. Most of the species, they have the data deficient. That's why it is very early to say which species are, but there are the one study we did in the freshwater snails. So in that case, there are 2 species that are included in the globally threatened category.
So of the 173 species we have, 2 species are globally threatened, yeah?
Yeah.
Yes. And if you include that, the introduced species, we have 174 species in Nepal.
Including, yes.
Yes, thank you. Another question is from Professor Karan Saha. You need to answer this properly. Can a same species individuals have a right and left opening? Remember, people talk about Dahine Sankha and Devre Sankha. So,
this is very, very good question. Generally, the right and left hand, they are in the different group of snails. But in some cases, it can exist in the same species as well. It has reported. So maybe I'm not sure. So because these are some of these Dahine and chunk shells. Generally, the chunk shells, they are very important in terms of the price. I think right-handed chunk shell is highly expensive. It is called as highly expensive. But these are only the specific right-handed shells are highly expensive, because there are so many species are with right-handed, but they have the very no value in fact. But some of the right-handed chunk shells are very, very expensive. I don't know what are the reasons. So that may be the reasons, because in the same species, there are due to some mutation process that shows the right-handed nature. That is some different characters but I have not much idea about this, because the sellers and the buyers, they know more than me, I think.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Budha. I hope you can telephone Professor Karansa also, later and explain him, in detail. I'll just move to the next question now. The next question is actually not my question, but it's almost like my question. It's by Ganesh Tamang, and he's saying, my query is regarding gastropod as a prey of some bird species like Asian open-billed stork and pesticides, and has anybody done pesticide analysis on gastropods? It's a very important question.
Very interesting questions. And that is the very interesting questions. So yes, I have also shown some of the open bill. That is borrowed by from others. So that, if you look the mollusk diversity area, if there are the much more diversity of the aquatic birds, you can see that there are the differently mollusk diversity is also high. So because the mollusk is the main food for many bird species. So open bill is the one example. So, but the pesticide, there are many studies have been done in the pesticide residue in snail. But in Nepal, it has not yet been done. So it is very important question and an important part to work, the pesticide residue in the even terrestrial as well as the freshwater snails and bivalves.
Thank you. Vishal Pokhrel has asked, you talked about the nutritional value of the mollusk. Is there anything special about mollusk nutrition?
Yes, there are the mollusk nutrition has been done by some of the past workers. Even the Bharat Subha has and his colleagues, they have worked on the food value, species, and their nutrition level. So generally, the nutrition level is very high in the pila, that the large snails, and in the mussels, that is the freshwater. We can say shippy, that is the freshwater bivalves. There are some studies done in this case.
Somebody has asked, Yasoda Thapa has asked through Facebook, she wants to get rid of the slugs, Ciplichira, to reduce in the garden. What is your suggestion?
So, yes, there are some of the these slugs. They have not harm a lot, in fact. So, but they are looking very, disturbing, slimy, disgusting type of, animal. But generally, the species that is found in our locality, that is the endemic. So sometimes these endemic species can be a pest as well, pest also. So for this, you can, what you can make, if there is the really very, annoying, so you can make some sort of the hiding places for these snails and slugs in your kitchen garden by, putting some of the hiding places, stones or some logs. Even you can place some fruit barks. So you can just
reduce. You can reduce,
place.
yeah, by doing that.
Reduce the number.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Dr. Prem, I think just a few last ones. You know, just the ecological role, maybe, you know, in 1 or 2 sentences, because of the time limit we have. And is there a possibility of doing this DNA kind of barcoding study of the other 1,000 species that are left to study, as you said?
Of course, we have to do it. We have to do it.
And there is a possibility.
This is
That's
the
what
next
you are
step.
saying. There is a possibility,
Yeah.
yeah. So just briefly, what is the ecological role of snail? Somebody's asking. I think it's Sam Sahazi from the Department of National Parks. So that will be our last question.
So the ecological roles first is that they are the food value for not only for the human beings, they are the food value for the other animals, so that they provide the food for the other animals. They are the part of the ecosystems. So in some of the snails, they are decomposers, so they recycle the nutrition level in the nature. Even in the freshwater, if we look at the bivalves, they are the filter feeders. They clean our water without cost. So these are some of the examples of the ecosystem services.
The ecological system. So I think we have done with the time, and Dr. Prem, on behalf of the organizers and audience, many thanks to you for sharing.
So there is another question,
I think we're just running out of time, so I'm just closing it.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you for your expertise today, you know, that you have shared. You have told many things to us about the mollusk, giant squid, which weigh, I don't know, 50 tons, did you say, or 1 ton, whatever. And, you know, quite a small ones also. And that, you know, I didn't know that mollusks were the largest of the invertebrates. And fantastic knowledge on the mollusk diversity of this country you shared. So hope we can, together, we can do a kind of mollusk walk soon, you know, when the monsoon, you know, and the water is still there and the slimy creatures are still getting around. So, so thank you all the audience for listening to this presentation and joining the Q&A session. And those of you who joined late, please be reminded that the entire presentation is available at Himalayan Nature's YouTube site. We'll be back with other presentation within a week or so. They will be focused on tigers because we have the Global Tiger Day coming. So we have a couple of presentation on tigers. We'll invite global expert on tigers as well as national experts. We'll have 2 different episodes. But for today, I would like to wish everybody goodbye and namaste. See you soon. Thank you.